Hey, what is up, everybody? This is Stevie Breach coming to you here today. Very fun day. We're talking about Bash at the Beach 1998. This is hopefully going to be talked about during the Last Stand, basically with the Michael Jordan documentary. They're going to be doing episode 9 and episode 10 tonight on ESPN. In my opinion, this was probably the best way to cap off the 1998 season that was basically played out with Michael Jordan and the Chicago Bulls going up against the Utah Jazz led by John Stockton and Karl Malone. During the NBA Finals, we basically had a commercial for WCW with at one point there was a loose ball going down there on the floor, and Karl Malone and Dennis Rodman went after that ball, where basically they got tussled up. They didn't get into a fight, but they got into an encounter. That basically led you to the point of wondering what would happen if Karl Malone and Dennis Rodman got into an actual fight. WCW at that point was basically being led into this match. Dennis Rodman basically had a deal with WCW where he would show up, be a part of the NWO. He had a match the year before. Basically, Karl Malone, who was a big-time NBA fan at that time, a big-time NBA star. He was a member of the Dream Team with Michael Jordan back in 1992 that won the gold medal at Barcelona. I believe he was the 1998 MVP of the actual league. He was a real wrestling fan. His agent and Dennis Rodman's agent were the same agent. I'm not saying that them going after that loose ball was 100% made up, but definitely, in my opinion, them going after that loose ball, what happened after the ball went out of bounds, I think that was a little bit of a lead to, for a little bit, I'm not going to say Eric Bischoff told them to do it, but that was basically a commercial for WCW. Just basically saying, like, hey, we're going to do this thing once it's all said and done. It's already, the ink's dried on the contracts. We're going to help them out a little bit. Basically, this happened right after the NBA Finals. I think this is about a month later. I think if this was a week later or 2 weeks later, it probably would have been bigger than it already was. This, in my opinion, was probably the biggest celebrity that WCW ever used to try and give the company a big push. At this time, I think Vince has already taken over the lead, and WCW is trying to use its money to get its way back in to the war. I think once the needle turned the night after WrestleMania 14 with Stone Cold Steve Austin winning the title, DX doing the turn on Mick Foley and Terry Funk inside of the steel cage, I think the writing was on the wall that WWE was in control. They were only going to give back if they really, really screwed it up. So many WCW shows ended, with big lead-ups, and just the actual pay-per-view would end in disqualification. It would end with a run-in. We never got a clear-cut winner on pay-per-view, and I think that's one of the reasons why WCW lost, because so many people would get the build-up, they throw the money down for the pay-per-view, and they actually wouldn't get their money's worth, and I think that's what chased away more WCW viewers and than anything else. And plus, Stone Cold Steve Austin, I think, became cooler than the NWO did, so the people that were watching WCW, the so-called sort of like WCW Nitro viewers that were in college, were just flipping the channel over and just watching wrestling over on the other network. I think that's what it came down to. But my buddy at work today said he wanted to actually see Dennis Rodman wrestle. And this was the match that he wanted to see. When I told him he actually had a match against Karl Malone, he knew that he wrestled at one show, but he didn't know it was against Karl Malone. My thing, I thought that it was actually at 97, and then when we pulled up the 97 main event on the WWE Network, that was Hogan and Rodman going up against Luger and the Giant, which I actually think they won. They should have. Because, Luger and the Giant are two wrestlers. Hogan's only one. He can only support the team so much with outside interference. You can't even really take that out. I think I remember seeing that on SportsCenter, honestly. The Giant, or no, it was the Luger Luger picked up Hogan and had him in the torture rack, and he tapped out. I think that was the end of that show. But we watched this one, and right off the bat, watching 1998 wrestling involving celebrities in 2020, this was a bad match. This was a bad match. This was nowhere near good. You got to think Dennis Rodman had very limited wrestling training, if any at all. Karl Malone probably took this serious, but how much training could he really do with a guy like Diamond Dallas Page, DDP, having to wrestle? At this point, he's probably wrestling Nitro. He's probably wrestling Thunder. He's having to do his own house shows because DDP was the name at that time. He was probably showing up, being involved in the main events. And Karl, in between, training for basketball, coming off the NBA Finals, how much did he really want to train in his own time to try and make this match really good? The match opened with Rodman going at it with DDP. DDP tried his best, and you can really see that when Rodman screws up, DDP, I don't want to say takes him to the woodshed, but he gets mad. And he has to really sort of take Rodman down to the ground a couple times. I don't know if he's whispering in his ear, like the just fucking go along with the plan, or what it is, but you can see DDP talking to Rodman in his ear as they're on the ground. He goes for a very, very, very early pinfall in the match, and I think that's when he's like telling him, like, hey, fucking calm down out here. We got to make this look good for the people. Hogan's on the outside. He's just glamming it up. The second that this match gets to the point where DDP tags in Karl Malone, and it looks like Malone and Rodman are actually going to go at it, we see Rodman tag out and tag Hogan in. We do see an interaction between Rodman and Malone. Very, very small in the match. They were very smart to sort of keep this away from each other. Malone ends up just picking up and slamming him. But this match ends in a disqualification. It's one of those things that I think people threw the money down to actually see it. And when it comes down to it, they should have just let Karl Malone get the win. Everybody goes home with big smiles on their faces. It's not like we really needed another NWO win in 1998 to save face. But basically, Malone and DDP just start, handing out, diamond cutters on everybody. And the disciple, Brutus the Barber Beefcake, slips in when Charles Robinson isn't looking, hits his own, they call it the Apocalypse, I think is what they call it, but it's the freaking diamond cutter. Same move, and we have them swoop in for the victory, NWO style, 1, 2, 3. And after that, Malone just goes batshit crazy. Malone hits the diamond cutter on Hogan. He hits the diamond cutter on Rodman, and he's laying everybody out. And basically, Charles Robinson comes in to try to smooth everything down. Hey, it is what it is. Calm down. You can't just be hitting your finish on everybody once the match is over. NWO got the win. He diamond cutters Charles Robinson just for being in the wrong place at the wrong time and screwing this matchup. I'm not going to say that WCW would have got back into the war, but definitely one of the things that I think that made WCW lose a lot of steam was just not having payoffs on pay-per-view. If you're going to have, Karl Malone, he lost the NBA Finals. They probably were a favorite. I don't know what happened to them in 99, but they probably were a favorite going in to win the NBA Finals. Stockton and Malone stayed together. They didn't break up for a couple of years when Stockton retired, and then Malone went to LA with Gary Payton to join Shaq and Kobe. Pretty sure it was both of them there. But you know what I mean? They probably were there. They should have just let Malone get the win. Malone never came back to wrestling. It's not like he really needed the money. And maybe he got in there and found out that it was harder than it was. He got blown up like Lawrence Taylor. I apologize, or something like that. But probably having them get the win probably would have helped him in the long run, because it's not like Rodman showed up like 2 years later at like one of those Road Wilds and had a match against the Macho Man, like a no disqualification. I think that honestly Rodman got thrown into a porta potty and then they tipped it over. That was a pretty cool spot, especially for a guy like Dennis Rodman, for Macho Man to do to him, but especially one for Rodman to take. But I think it would have helped them out more if they were to let the babyface get the win. But then again, people are going to blame on Hogan, probably using his creative control or something like that. I don't know if Eric Bischoff's ever done a WCW podcast, 83 Weeks, about this show or not. Maybe he'll do it this July. Maybe he wasn't with the company at the time. I think he is, 98. But we'll see if there's more behind the scenes that we didn't see. But looking back at this in 2020, this is a bad match, guys. Bad match.